Do you wish you had some really cool crochet fingerless gloves for this transitional end of winter, beginning of springtime? Well, this is the video for you! Hang out with me and I will tell you how you can make yourself a pair of some awesome fingerless gloves to rock this spring. So let's get into it. How did I make these cool gloves from start to finish? Let's do it. Okay, so first you'll need your supplies. So of course you need some crochet hooks of varying sizes. You'll only need one for one project, but darning needles to weave in ends. And then some beautiful yarn. I thrifted mine for about $6 for this bag of yarn. It is 30% silk and 70% cotton and just gorgeous. So whatever yarn speaks to you. Once you've got your supplies, it is time to make a sketch. This is where I love to start, just to get the juices flowing, to get an idea of what kind of shapes I'll need, what different pieces will need to be made, and the general gist of what the vibe is that I'm going for. So I decided that I wanted to start with a spiral. I thought that that would be the main shape of this piece. I practiced doing some spirals, learned how to crochet a spiral on some practice yarn, and I decided that this would be the right thing, especially for these colors. I thought it was the best. Then I try to figure out like what shape I would need on top of that. So the spiral is, in theory, going to be a square in the middle of kind of my palm, and then we'll need some wrist area with maybe some ribbing to have it stretchy, and the top maybe also some ribbing or just some extra stitches on top to get the length of my fingers. And then of course a thumb. The shape of the thumb was confusing to me, but this is what I decided I wanted it to be. And then I added some colors. I think the sketch was also helpful to figure out like which colors would go where. So sketching, very important step. Do not skip. Also, it's just fun. It's a fun time. All right, the next step is to experiment and test out, testing the gauge of our hooks. So I started with a 5mm hook, but later decided that a 4.25 was better for kind of the tightness and the yarn that I had. Every yarn is different, so you'll want to experiment that. And then also experimenting with how I wanted the colors to be and how the shape was going to be, how big it needed to be this part of my glove. So in this experiment phase, I realized it was going to be hard to turn this spiral into a square. I watched some different videos on how to make a spiral into a square, but they started with a different kind of spiral, and I wasn't really satisfied with the size and the way that they looked. So I ended up ultimately deciding to freehand the square, which, you know, for better or worse, that's what I did, and it worked out. But yeah, so just briefly, I'll tell you, to start the spiral, I started with a magic circle, then I double crocheted 6 of one color into the center, and then 6 of the next color into the center, and then the rest of the rows are kind of on top of those. So each row, the second row, we have 2 double crochets into each stitch so that we're expanding. After that, it's 2 double crochets, then 1 double crochet, and it alternates back and forth. And then for each row after that, adding a one double crochet between the 2 double crochets, if that makes sense. Very briefly. Anyway, I kind of chickened out at first and went for just forever and just kept making this spiral, and it got really out of hand, and I kind of loved it, and it was a nice, just like fun little step. So don't be afraid to like let the first experiment and testing stage here take some time and some energy and get creative with it, have fun with it. If something feels good, it's okay to like just keep doing that. It was nice, kind of meditative, repetitive motion of making this spiral. Okay, so after the experiment phase is the actual creating the blocks. So like I said, I freehanded this square, I squared it up with one of my spirals, and then after that I just repeated it 3 more times. So big step is creating the blocks, and these are going to be very important obviously for the rest of the glove, so don't be afraid to do it over again if you need to and get it right. Okay, once you've got your 4 beautiful blocks, it is time to add the cuff. So at first I did the ribbing on this, and then ultimately I decided to frog it just because it wasn't it wasn't looking quite right. It was wonky on the bottom. There were like too many rows. So I decided to go a different direction, and that is okay. So when I went back, I decided to do just some straight rows of like half double crochets all the way around and alternating colors. And this is where my stripe came in. I really like the design that I came up with here. And I also used that first row of like half double crochets to square it off even more. So I like added some double crochets, some treble crochets in the spots that were like dipping to square it off there. So if your squares aren't perfect, that's okay. You can always use the next couple rows and steps of the cuff and of the top to square it up a little better. Okay, so once your cuff is looking good, it is time to add the finger details. So for me on the top, at first I just added a double crochet all the way around where my finger opening was, just to give it some height and to get an idea of where it was going, and I wasn't sure what to do next. So then I focused on the thumbs, and for the thumb, I decided that the easiest way to do it was to add a triangle on the front panel and a triangle on the back panel, and then attach them going up the side of the triangle to make the thumb, and then of course attach it like in the middle to make the thumb, if that makes sense. So instead of making like a thumb in like a round or on both sides, I did each panel separately. The front and the back each had a matching triangle that would fit my thumb shape. And when those two triangles were attached, then I added in the round a single crochet all the way around, just to give it a little bit more height and to get that shape to make sense and make it a little bit cleaner on the edge. And then back to the top of like the rest of the fingers, there's lots of options of what to do here depending on how much length you want. If you actually want to close up any of those fingers, I did not want to do that, but I did need some more length on my fingers, and I really wanted a scalloped edge on the top. So that is what I did for my final step on the top of the glove. For my final finger detail was a scalloped edge, and really quick, just in case you're looking for an easy way to do a scalloped edge, I attached the new color, I skipped a stitch, and then I did 5 double crochets into the next stitch, and then skip a stitch and slip stitch. So that's one scallop or shell, and that worked out really well. I thought it came out beautifully. Okay, and then if you've done all of these steps and you're happy with all of the shapes, and let me just stress this, go back and fix it if you're not happy with it. I usually don't do that, but in this project, I really forced myself to always go back and fix it if there was something off, and I'm so glad that I did. It made a huge difference in the end product, and it's still not perfect, but major things that I knew were going to bother me, I just took the time right then and there and went back, frogged it, and tried it again while I was thinking of it, while I knew how to do it, and before I attached other things onto it. So really take those times in each of these steps to commit to making it the best you can. And this is partly why I left all my ends. I didn't weave in a single end all the way up to this point, and maybe that's a lie. Maybe I'm just making that up to make myself feel better about it, but I left all those ends just in case I needed to go back. So at the end, it was just a long weaving end fest, and I tried to just really enjoy this step, to take it slow and let it, feel again like at the beginning, like the repetitive kind of meditative practice almost, and enjoyed it rather than rushing through it. And the way that I did this in a more polished way than I have in the past, I watched a video and realized that when you weave an end, you should go back and forth a few times. So that's basically the big secret that I learned on this project, as well as the color work, which was really fun. All right, friends, and those are the steps. That is all you need to do to make yourself a pair of awesome fingerless crochet gloves right now. This project admittedly took me a little over a month to complete, with like maybe 10 to 12 actual individual days that I worked on it. And I also brought it to 2 different craft nights, and it's just been a labor of love. It was hard and fun, and I am so glad to have this final product, and I'm excited to have been able to share with you how I did it, so that maybe you can have a slightly easier time than I did in creating your own. So if you stuck around to the end, thank you so much. Please give me a like and a subscribe. Maybe hit the bell to be notified when my next video comes. Let me know down in the comments if you have any other tips on how to make crochet fingerless gloves, and also what your current whip is right now at the end of winter. Almost spring. Thank you so much for being here, for hanging out. I hope you had fun, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.